There's a saying that we often overestimate what we can accomplish in a single day and greatly underestimate what we can accomplish in a single year. And the idea behind this is that we often put way too much on our to-do list on a daily basis to where we can't possibly keep up with it. But we underestimate the value of really small incremental actions and how those can stack and add up to great accomplishments over a longer period of time, like a year. So let's combine the power of taking micro actions with the power of having a visually clear space so that you can have mental clarity, you can have more energy, and just reclaim your focus so that you can accomplish even more in any given year. Today I'm sharing 60-second habits that will help you to reduce visual clutter. The first one is practicing the 1-minute rule. I know that you probably heard a million different rules. There's a 2-minute rule, a 5-minute rule, but if a task can be done in under a minute, there's no reason not to do it immediately. That includes things like hanging up your coat after you use it, or putting away your shoes, or wiping down the counter right after you make a sandwich. The second habit is to use a shoe rack at the entryway. This is something that I've sworn by ever since we got our shoe rack when we moved into this condo. It takes just seconds to take your shoes off every day and put them on a rack. I mean, it's not going to take you any longer than it would to walk all the way upstairs in your shoes and put them in your closet, but also it keeps down any shoe clutter, like especially with kids, people just taking off their shoes wherever they sit down. It adds to extra clutter on the floor that you could trip over, and extra time of going back and forth whenever you need to find or grab your shoes, as opposed to having them right by the door where you're naturally going to be leaving and coming in. Plus, it's just more sanitary and better for your carpet if you have carpet. Number 3 is to create a central hub. This is something that I really enjoy doing, especially in dining rooms or in little nooks or corners of the kitchen. It's basically just scooping surface items into a central location, because there are some items that you don't necessarily want to put away in a cabinet or a drawer. For example, on our dining table, we have salt and pepper shakers and we have our coasters. Those aren't something that we want to go put away every time. And so I have a little hub or a little spot where those all go together, and it still looks visually appealing because they're not just haphazardly strewn across the dining table. We've also started a practice of using a big rope bin to hold all of our bars, like granola bars, breakfast bars, instead of having a ton of boxes inside of our pantry, because we have a pretty small pantry space. And so whenever these boxes get down to just like 1 or 2 bars, it's taking up unnecessary space in our pantry. So instead, even if we have a brand new box, we open it up and we dump it all into one big rope bin and then just sift through that whenever we want to get a breakfast bar or some kind of a quick snack. When it comes to the bedroom, there are very few things that make quite as big a difference as making your bed. Now, I am not like a wake up in the morning and fully make my bed kind of person, but I do like to immediately straighten out the top cover and like toss the pillows in the right place. I like to have a smooth surface there because it just makes everything feel and look more put together. It takes like 5 seconds or less, and I don't even have to think about it. Using a discard box is another really quick way to keep down clutter, especially inside of your drawers. So I know a lot of times what people do is they'll realize that there's something they don't want to keep, and they make this little mental note of, oh, I need to donate this at some point, but then they put it right back in their drawer. And so it adds clutter to what's supposed to be a functional space, this drawer space, that doesn't need to be there. And a lot of times that'll end up being just tossed on the floor or tossed aside and add to the visual clutter. When you keep a discard bag or a discard box, then you can just immediately place those items as you come across them inside that bag or box. And then once it gets full, then that's also a visual cue for you to take something to the donation facility. Number 6 is to consolidate, and I've talked so many times about consolidating and how it's probably one of my favorite decluttering hacks because it immediately gives you results. It doesn't take much time to put 2 things into one or 3 things into one, but it immediately gives you 50% of your space back, 66% of your space back, just depending on how many things you're combining. So, using things like bottles in the shower that can be refillable with shampoo so that you never have that extra bottle of overlap when you buy the new one and you're not quite finished with the old one, or, using flour containers to dump all of the new bags of flour in and have all of those in one spot. All of these are examples of consolidating, and there are so many different ways and spaces that you can consolidate. Spices, anything that's in packages, even things that are staying in their original bottle, like olive oil or something like that. You could easily just drizzle the last little bit of the previous empty container into the new one, and there you've consolidated. Number 7 is to put it away. Now, this could look like just putting something away when you're done using it, or it could be like a 60-second reset cycle. I've talked before about using a reset routine to just set everything back to neutral so that you're not having to wait and do it all in one big giant cleaning splurge or decluttering splurge. But you can do this even in a short period of time, like 60 seconds. Take 60 seconds to just clear the trash off the counter or pick up the laundry off the floor and toss it in the hamper. Little tasks like that can go a long way. Number 8 is to sort mail immediately. When you bring the mail in from the mailbox or the post office, just quickly sort it. Recycle the junk mail, file things that are important and need to be filed, and discard what's no longer needed. I don't really mess with paper. I like to have as few paper physical copies of things as possible inside of my home. So I don't have a big filing cabinet. I don't have something like an inbox where people can, put things when they come in with the mail and put it in their inbox to tend to later. I prefer the just like get it done and get it out of my face kind of method. And that really does help me to keep down paper clutter inside of my home, even right after checking the mail. Number 9 is dish maintenance, because if there is one space in the house, besides maybe laundry, that can get so bulky and gross and overrun, and like we all have these bottlenecks for our dish process, and that bottleneck is usually the dishwasher or the drying rack if you don't have a dishwasher. And so keeping that bottleneck clear and flowing is what's going to really help you to reduce the dish clutter backflow that happens inside of your space. So after eating or after, using a cup that you're not going to be using anymore for the day, go ahead and just like immediately wash it and put it in the dishwasher or on the drying rack. And it takes only 60 seconds when you're doing that every time, but it saves you so much more time later, and it reduces, again, that visual clutter that could be backlogging onto your kitchen counters. Now, if there's one area that I've been struggling with here lately for whatever reason, it's to hang it up. Hang it up after using. I can't tell you how many times, because especially during the winter, it gets really cold, and so I'll get hot and then I'll get cold. And so the hoodies are coming on and off, and so I'll take it off and toss it on the bed to use later, and eventually I have just a small pile of hoodies. So one thing that I have to remind myself is that it only takes 60 seconds to just grab that hoodie and put it on a hanger. So I recently got these new hangers that have like a little easy glide collar slot, I guess you can call it, so that it doesn't take very long. I don't have to sit there and finagle with it or worry about the velvet catching on the cloth or anything like that. And my personal goal with this is just to encourage myself to hang it back up as soon as I take it off. Number 11 is to do a little trash patrol. Just look around your space and see what little pieces of wrappers or items that you could just grab really fast and go toss them in the trash or recycling. Just dispose of them right away, and it makes such a big difference to the visual clutter in your space and feeling clean. Because as we all know, clutter begets clutter, trash begets trash. So like if you start a little pile on your bedroom desk or bedside table or dining room table, it's going to continue to accumulate and collect other trash. Number 12 is to wipe after use. I remember my grandmother used to come in and wipe the sink after anybody used it. Even if you just washed your hands, she was in there with her little cup towel just drying out the sink. And I thought it was a little extreme at the time, but at the same time, I always loved using her sinks because I always felt like I was the first person to use it. It felt so clean and pristine. And I doubt that she ever had to go in there and do deep scrubbing because she constantly kept things wiped down. You can do this, of course, with tons of things. You use the toaster, just wipe it down and put it back. You may not think of like gross sludge and scum as being visual clutter, but it is. It definitely catches your visual attention, distracts you, and can make you feel a little gross. Number 13 is to mask cords. There are times where you just can't avoid cords hanging. Like if you have to use window units because you don't have central AC, there's going to be a cord there that's hanging from the window to wherever the plug is. And I'm sure, like me, you wouldn't prefer to have that, but it's just part of where we are. So like you have to deal with cords sometimes. And yes, I do more in-depth types of cord hanging, like, feeding the TV cord behind the wall so that it's not just hanging down the wall, but that obviously takes more than 60 seconds. However, with other cords, you could just put something in front of it, like place a plant or a lamp or a bin for blankets or something in front of the hanging cord, and it doesn't take long, but it really helps to reduce that visual clutter. Speaking of a bin for blankets, a blanket collector or one of those nice baskets that you can just toss all of your throw blankets in, that can be another great, easy, quick way to help reduce clutter inside of your living room or wherever you have the bin. And if you can't see through the bin, then nobody even knows if they're folded or not. And finally, rearrange surface items. This is something that could take like 2 or 3 seconds, but whenever you group things together in a way that leaves some negative space, that helps to reduce the visual clutter and it gives a sense of clarity to that space. So sliding things into either balanced groupings or category groupings. Hopefully this video gave you some ideas and inspiration on ways to create more space in less time inside of your own home. Doesn't have to be necessarily a big decluttering spree. Even just reducing visual clutter through little 60-second habits or less can make such a huge difference over the course of your week. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and I'll chat with you next week.